Hello everyone, Pete here, and one of the very best features of SteamOS is the awesome EmuDeck app, which greatly simplifies downloading and configuring all of the very best emulators that we'll ever need together in a slick user interface. So here are the 7 easy steps we need to get EmuDeck set up on SteamOS, either of course on our Steam Deck or indeed on a Windows handheld like the Ally, Ally X, Legion Go that has the official SteamOS on, or like I'm going to do here on my Ally X with dual boot Bazzite. I'll help you to navigate through the tricky areas of this, which is a very detailed step-by-step guide to BIOS, as I know that so many gamers really struggle and get freaked out by this, and also Steam Rom Manager too, which also causes a lot of confusion for many. I'll go through a cheat method for those of us who really struggle to locate BIOS and ROMs, and finally I'll share 6 bonus tips to really make our experience of using EmuDeck in SteamOS much better. So let's dive straight in and start with step 1, which is to hit the power button and click on switch to desktop. We're now in our desktop mode, so let's open a web browser, go to emudeck.com to download EmuDeck, the link is in the description, and now we're on the official EmuDeck website. Scroll down a little and press the download button, scroll down a little more to the download EmuDeck section, and obviously here let's choose the SteamOS version to download. Here we can select 2 versions. On the right is an early access version with features like Cloud Sync, and this is a great way to support these awesome developers. For the time being, I'm just going to select the standard version on the left, which is free, so simply click on the purple download for free button. Next for step 2, let's install EmuDeck. So let's minimize our browser, click on the Dolphin file manager icon, find the file that we just downloaded, which in my case is in the downloads folder. Double click to bring up this pop-up box, press continue, simply type our SteamOS password in, then press OK to continue to install. For step 3, we now need to set EmuDeck up. We can choose easy mode and customize options later, but let's select custom mode to walk through each step in this together. Next, select what drive we'd like our games on, or as they're called in emulation terms, ROMs to be on. If your internal space is limited, then you may want to select an SD card right here. I don't have an SD card in, which is why it says error, or you may want to select a custom directory if you're an advanced user. But I'm going to select the internal storage to store all of my games, as I've installed a 4TB SSD and split half for Windows and also half for Bazzite and SteamOS. So I have almost a whopping 2TB available. Next we select our device, and whether we're doing this on a Steam Deck or like me on an Ally X and Bazzite, let's select the Steam Deck option, then click Next. Next is a recent addition to the EmuDeck process called Level of Integration. We can pick low if we only want to launch games only within the front end called Emulation Station, but I'd highly recommend we select the highest option so that our emulation ROMs will be integrated into our Steam game library that I'll show you later, then click Next. Next, select which emulators you'd like to be installed and configured. This is personal to you, which ones that you want, but for me, I'm not bothered about Jaguar, so I'll leave this to off. I do want Dreamcast, so I'll click this to on and press both. I do want arcade games, so I'll click and press both. I do want Game Boy Advance, so I'll click and press both. I do want Nintendo 64, so I'll click this and press both. I'm not too bothered about PS4, so I'll turn this to off, and we just hit next when we are finished. On this very similar emulator and tools configuration page, simply hit next. Then on this configure autosave page, I would highly recommend setting autosave to on for these specific emulators, so that when we exit out of games on these systems, our game will be automatically saved, which is neat. If you want to enable retro achievements, which add a nice modern twist to retro games, then you can register for an account at retroachievements.org if you haven't already. Then we log into our account right here. If we're successful, then we should get this successfully connected to retro achievements message here and click next. These next options are all what you personally prefer as a gamer. But for me, I'm going to select game bezels to on for even more of a nice retro feel for these older systems. I'm going to keep on 4:3 for classic Sega systems and also 4:3 aspect ratio for classic Nintendo. I'm going to select the wider 16:9 aspect ratio for classic 3D games and also GameCube games too. I'm going to turn on LCD shader for these handheld retro systems, but you can keep this off if you don't want to recreate that old look feel. Next, I'm going to turn the CRT shader to on for these classic CRT shader systems listed here, but by all means you can keep this off if you don't want to bring back memories of those old school TVs that we had as kids. And I'll select to on for classic 3D games. Next is another new screen recently added which relates to the Nintendo controller layout, where A is mapped to the B button. I do like this, so I won't change anything and press next. Finally, we get this summary screen to recap everything that we've picked so that we can double check that we're happy right here. Remember that we can always change these settings later on, and when we're happy we just hit finish to begin installation. And this is where the magic happens, as EmuDeck now saves us so many hours of downloading and configuring all the emulators. This should only take a few minutes, so if it does take any longer than say 15 minutes, then you may have run into a problem somewhere. Then we'll get this installation complete message, and we get those beautiful green ticks on all of our emulators that have successfully installed. Then hit next. Now we have this copy our game screen, which tells us that we need to get our ROMs, which remember is the name for our retro games, and also BIOS, which is what some of the more modern systems like PS2 need, and I'll cover this in a moment. So let's just hit manual copy, then open emulation folder. This emulation folder is stored in the home section of SteamOS. This is a crucial folder that we'll access a lot. In particular the BIOS that we place into this BIOS folder here, and also our retro games called ROMs that will place into this ROMs folder right here. You can start to copy files into here if you like to, but right now I'm going to close the folder, then hit the close button, then click next. The next page is how we launch the games, and Steam Rom Manager is a key part of this. So just click this button to open it, and on the Steam input message just hit yes. On this welcome to Steam Rom Manager page, we need to choose the location of our Steam directory. Don't freak out here, we just click browse and the defaults will be fine. So for me, my name is right here in the home folder. When we set up SteamOS, then click OK. So with our correct location, which is the default it's set for us in place, let's hit next. Now we need to choose our user account, so just hit choose. It pops up with the location that we just chose, so we simply hit save. Nothing appears in this long grey bar, but that's okay, just click next. So now we're in the Steam Rom Manager for the first time, and this here really throws a lot of people off. I know it did for me when I first did this. Let's go to settings, then let's change this from the default deck to EmuDeck. That's much better. Every time we place ROMs into the correct ROM folder that I'll show you in a moment, we hit this add games button right here, and then this parse button. But we haven't placed any yet, so I'll just hit the X to close, and we need to reconfigure this shortly anyway. This emulation hotkeys tells us some useful info that I'll cover in my tip section in a moment, so we just hit finish. And that's it. We only need to do all that we've just done once. EmuDeck is now up and running. Great job. So on the left is our EmuDeck settings that we'll come back to shortly. So let's close out of EmuDeck, and we can right click and move to the waste bin the EmuDeck installer file, as it's no longer needed. And if at any time that we want to go back into EmuDeck settings, we can just click on EmuDeck here, and boom, we're right back into settings. So now that EmuDeck is fully set up, next for step 4 is BIOS. So let's click on the super helpful BIOS checker button, and I'm sure that yours will be just like mine, that all will be that dreaded red, as we haven't placed any BIOS yet. Let me pause for a moment and explain this, as a lot of new gamers get really freaked out at this point. But BIOS is not needed for the older retro consoles like SNES and Mega Drive, only for the newer systems as shown on this list. Also know that we only have to set this BIOS up just this one time. So once we've located our BIOS, then definitely back them up and keep them safe, just in case that we ever need to use them again. And this is actually really simple, so let's not overthink this. Let's open up our web browser, and all it requires is a simple Google search of the system, like PS1, and then the word BIOS. That is it. So once we've downloaded the BIOS file, which in this case of PS1 is called scph1001.bin, let's right click, copy it, select our home location, then that new and super important emulation folder that EmuDeck automatically created, and into the BIOS folder. Here we just need to place it into the correct system folder. If we scroll down to the bottom of this and then the readme text and open, then this tells us into which folder. So PS1 is into the DuckStation folder. So let's close that, and DuckStation folder isn't here. So let's just right click, paste our PS1 BIOS file here, head back into EmuDeck, click off the BIOS checker to reset it, then back onto the BIOS checker, and voila, our PS1 BIOS is now green. Next, let's do the PS2 BIOS. So let's Google PS2 and then the word BIOS. I've downloaded both the Europe and USA BIOS versions, so pick which you prefer. I'll go with the USA version, so let's right click and copy. Again, back to home and then the emulation folder and into BIOS. Right click and paste here. Something that is really crucial to remember is that this is where it says do not make subfolders for BIOS, as EmuDeck can't read them. So let's double click onto our zip file, press extract, then extract again, close this window, and this is our unzipped PS2 BIOS file. Next, let's go into this PS2 BIOS folder, select all folders, we can cut or copy them, and paste them into our BIOS folder. EmuDeck still can't read these subfolders, so let's click onto the first folder ending in 160, copy the 3 files, and paste into BIOS. Let's head into the second folder ending in 200, copy these 3 files, and then paste into the main BIOS folder. Let's head into the third folder ending in 220, select and copy these 5 files, then paste into the main BIOS folder. And in the final folder ending in 230, select and copy these 6 files and paste into the main BIOS folder. So now if we head back into EmuDeck settings and click off, then click back into the BIOS checker, our PS2 is now that lovely green colour. With the Switch BIOS, I'm going to cover this in a dedicated and fully updated Switch SteamOS guide very soon, so definitely make sure that you're subscribed with notifications on, as you won't want to miss that one. Next is the Sega CD BIOS, so let's Google Sega CD BIOS. I've downloaded one that I've easily found as a zip file, so let's right click and copy, then home and then emulation and then BIOS, right click and paste the zip file here. Now double click on the zip file, press extract, click on emulation right here, then the BIOS folder, then extract, close out. This unzipped Sega CD BIOS has been created, so head into here, select all 62 files, so right to the bottom, right click and copy, click the BIOS right here, right click and paste all 62 items. And yeah, our main BIOS folder is starting to get pretty messy. Let's head back into EmuDeck settings, click off, then back into BIOS checker, and our Sega CD BIOS is now green. Sega Saturn BIOS is just like the Sega CD, so let's Google Saturn BIOS. It's in a zip file, so copy it, paste it into the main BIOS folder, double click to extract it, hit extract, select emulation, double click the BIOS folder here, then hit extract, open up our newly unzipped Saturn BIOS folder, select the 11 BIOS files and copy them, click back into the BIOS, right click and paste the 11 files into the main BIOS folder. And then when we click off and then back into the BIOS checker, Saturn is now green. The DS BIOS is super easy, so just Google it. We get a zip file, so copy it and place it into our BIOS folder. Double click to extract. There's only 3 files here, so just hit extract. Hit emulation, then double click BIOS and extract. Open our new DS BIOS folder, copy the 3 files, and then paste them into our main BIOS folder. And look, now it is green for DS BIOS. And finally, let's get our Dreamcast BIOS by searching for it. Can I just say that don't you just love how the internet is like an archive of information? I've downloaded it and it's called DC Boot, so copy and paste this into BIOS, double click then extract, hit emulation, then double click BIOS, then press extract, open up our unzipped folder and copy all 7 files. For Steam Deck, open up the DC folder that was already in the emulation folder and paste our 7 files here. Click off and then back into BIOS checker, and our systems are now all green. See, that wasn't too hard, was it? And remember, we only need to do this one time, setting it all up, so great job. Now is the time to add our games for step 5. So let's close out of EmuDeck, open up our emulation folder, which in my case is in home, then emulation, open up our super important ROMs folder, And right here is where we copy and paste all of our games, which in emulation terms are called ROMs, into the correct system folder. So for example, Game Boy Advance ROMs go into this folder called GBA, GameCube ROMs go into this GC folder, PS2 ROMs go into here, and regular viewers know that my favourite retro system is the Super Nintendo, so these ROMs will go into this folder called SNES, and so on. In terms of finding retro games, which remember they're called ROMs, is very easy. Simply open our web browser. I would highly recommend using an amazing app called Brave Browser to locate our ROMs online and to avoid those pesky unwanted and other dubious pop-ups. Then search for the name of our system, so SNES for example, then the name of the game, so the classic Aladdin for example, then the word ROM. And you should be able to find pretty much any game in gaming history easily. Then it's just a case of double clicking, then hit extract. I'm going to select home, then desktop, then press extract, then go into our super important emulation folder, into ROMs, find the correct system folder, which in this case is SNES, and we simply move our ROM into here. Super easy. A huge tip I have is I highly recommend you have your emulation folder regularly backed up. As if we look here on my SD card, my backed up emulation folder is here packed with all my BIOS and ROMs I've accumulated over the last few years. In fact, I'm going to copy my backed up ROMs folder, go to my home on my internal SSD, and then into our new emulation folder, and paste my backed up ROMs into here. And in fact, leave this overnight as it's going to take a while. One final thing is that if you're really struggling to locate ROMs and BIOS, then to consider getting this 1TB retro SD card for SteamOS packed with over 60,000 retro games. This is insane. I'm going to sleep my handheld and put it in. Then when it turns back on, we can hit share, then open with File Manager. All the BIOS that we need is already here. And if we head into ROMs, as I say, this 1TB is packed with over 60,000 ROMs already here, saving us so many hours of time. So like Commodore 64, open this and every game is here. And yet pretty much every Atari ST game ever released is here. And my favourite SNES, again, every game ever released is here too, which is mind-blowing. So if you press split, then onto the right, go to where our own ROMs folder is. So for me, it's in home, then emulation, then ROMs. I'll open up my SNES folder and just copy any SNES game from this retro SD card. So I'll copy over Alien 3 for example, Animaniacs, Batman Returns. By the way, for these older systems like SNES and Genesis, we don't have to unzip files by the way, although I do like to unzip them personally, although definitely unzip files for later systems like GameCube and so on. We can of course just play all of the 60,000 retro games straight off this retro SD using something called Batocera that comes with it. I talked all about it in this vid, and I'll leave a link to that vid and also the purchase link below in the description. For step 6, now our BIOS and ROMs are all in place, let's close out and talk about Steam Rom Manager. So let's head into EmuDeck. This first ever time we need to head to Manage Emulators, scroll down to Steam Rom Manager right at the bottom, click on this, then click Reset Configuration. And this is a very crucial step that we need to do just this first time for it to work properly. And then we'll get this Steam Rom Manager's configuration is updated message. So let's close, head into Steam Rom Manager right here. This first time we'll get this welcome message, so just hit choose. Simply select our Steam account, then hit save, then hit next. Here are all of our systems. I'm happy to keep them all, but you can toggle off any that you don't want. Hit this add games button that we'll use a lot, then this parse button, and here are all of the retro games that we've added into our ROMs folder. Tapping the right arrow on a game means that we can change the game artwork if we want to. Press this blue save to Steam button, then it'll take just a moment, especially this first time, and we can see it working on the top right. And when it's finished, we'll get this done adding entries, and now all of our retro games will appear within our Steam library, which is neat. We finished here, so let's exit out. There's one final thing that we need to do this first time. So again, let's head into Manage Emulators. Again, scroll all the way down and click on Emulation Station. And this is our front end to launch our games. We need to install this, so simply click Install. we'll get this message saying that it's installed successfully, so we can click close and then exit out. So we are now fully set up, so great job. Remember that every single time that we add a new ROM into our correct system folder within the main ROMs folder, we do need to exit out and head into EmuDeck, then into Steam Rom Manager, then add games, then parse, then save to Steam for them to appear in Steam game mode, so don't forget to do this. And finally, for step 7, let's head into gaming mode. Our new retro games aren't showing up here in the main game library, but don't freak out. Scroll across to view more in our library, then head into our non-Steam tab, and here are our retro games that we've just added, which is sweet. And here you'll find the Emulation Station app that we just downloaded and launch it. And this is the awesome front end where we can access all of our favorite games and consoles in one convenient place. Let's change the theme because this default is super boring. So let's press the start button, then UI settings, head to theme downloader. This first time we'll get this first time message, so click proceed. And there are incredible ones to choose from here, so pick the one that you really love. But my favorite is called Artflix Revisited, so I'd highly recommend downloading this one for sure. Now let's head back into UI settings, then theme, change it to Artflix Revisited that we've just downloaded. And just look at this theme is absolutely next level, and it really does enhance choosing which of our systems and retro games to play to a whole new level. All of our ROMs are categorized by each system, and to get artwork info for each of our ROMs, which in emulation terms is called scraping, hit the menu button, click scraper, select our systems, so let's select all, and click start. If you have a lot of ROMs, and this may take a while, so grab a cool beverage, and as a famous philosopher once said, oh hell yeah! Once it's finished, we'll get this completed message. For me, it scraped the artwork for most of my games, so let's try and get the last 22 by hitting OK. Let's change scrape from the default screen scraper to the games DB. Let's change scrape these games from all to no metadata, and it should get almost all of the rest, which is ace. And now check this out. When we head into each of our systems, each game now has its own artwork and details on the game, which is glorious. Man, I love this so much. And at any time we can exit by pressing the start button, then quit back to our game library. I'm not a big fan of the default Emulation Station game artwork, so let's press the start button, then select change artwork. I'm going to choose this as my vertical artwork. This is my horizontal artwork when I exit out of Emulation Station, and this matching one for my background. And if you want to know how I just did that, then I just covered it in my brand new and fully updated top 10 essential Decky Loader plugins vid, and I'll leave a link below in the description. So Emulation Station is awesome for dipping in and out of games a lot without the games clogging up our main game library. So for example, the classic Biker Mice from Mars on the SNES I love playing, but I don't really tend to play for more than say 5 minutes at a time. So for this one, I just play inside Emulation Station, as I don't want it clogging up my main game library. However, if there are specific retro games that we play a lot and do want quick access to in our game library, head over to view more in our library, go to the collections tab. Here in our retro systems with the ROMs that we placed before in desktop mode, go into the system that you want, so for me is the SNES, load up the game you know you'll play a lot and want easy access to, so in my case is Donkey Kong Country. We can enjoy this for as long as we want to, then when we've finished and head back into our main game library, it's now here ready to play for super easy access. Okay, and now for 6 quick bonus tips. Tip 1 is to press select and R1 at the same time to save a game, and this is super useful before tricky sections. Tip 2 is to press select and L1 at any time to load the last save point. Tip 3 is super helpful, and that is to press select and stop buttons at the same time to quit out of a game quickly. And remember that if we've enabled autosave, then it will automatically save for us, which is neat. Back in the front end called Emulation Station, tip 4 is to press the Y button to favorite a game, so it appears at the top when we go into each console system, which is a nice time saver. The last 2 tips are in the back end, which is EmuDeck, so let's switch back to desktop mode and then head back into EmuDeck. Tip 5 is to remember that all of our key settings are here, so log into retro achievements here if you haven't already. And a super important one we need to do is to head into screen resolution and make sure that all of our more modern systems are set to 1080p, especially if we're doing this on a 1080p display like the Ally, as they're all set as the default to 720p for some reason, and it didn't give us an opportunity to change this in our setup process. And for tip 6, manage emulators is a very important area. Keep an eye on here as our emulators get updated regularly, so we just need to click update. And also, if you ever run into any problems or issues with any emulators, then head into the emulator that's causing the problem. By the way, we can access control settings here as well, and click this super important reset configuration button. And this will fix like 99% of any problems that we have. Congratulations, you're now fully set up with EmuDeck. And I'd love to know if this guide helped you to do just that, so do let us know in the comments. And also, I'd love to hear what are the first 3 retro games that you will play with EmuDeck. And also, feel free to share any specific tips, settings, and themes that you recommend for EmuDeck in the comments below. And as a thank you for watching this far, I'd love to share this awesome quote. Life can look so different in just a few short months. Keep going. If you're going through a really tough situation right now, then realize that it's only temporary. The pain and stress that you're experiencing won't last forever. So let's do our very best to stay positive, know that tough times builds resilience, and so stay encouraged today, guys. And as an extra bonus treat for staying right to the end, here's our gorgeous rescue cat, and her name is Pancake. And if you enjoyed today's video, then check out that top 10 essential Decky loader plugins vid in the top right, or that retro SD card with 60,000 preloaded games that I mentioned in the bottom right. As always, be sure to like and subscribe if you found this helpful. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.